there is a risk that the journey you're on in life is not one that you're constantly building into, but it's one that's constantly burning you out.
Welcome back, or welcome to another episode of the Success Times Happiness Podcast. I am your host, Richard Thompson, and today we bring back my very best friend, Nick Quinn, to talk about all things risk and reward when it comes to business and life in general. So sit back, and I hope you really enjoy this interview. You would have to be one of the youngest people in sort of your level of area or your level of the firm, do you think, at least in the office?
Yeah. So historically, in my area of expertise, I guess that success has been granted on years of experience and number of grey hairs you have, and that's something I've come up against quite a bit in my career, and have had reasonable level of success of sort of breaking through that stereotype, and to the point where at my current firm, I was the youngest individual to ever be, I guess, given the opportunity to have ownership within the company. So yeah, I have, I guess, taken on roles of seniority relatively sooner than others in industry.
And we've talked about this at length, but I think you're someone who is similar to me, where it's like, well, there's no real time for celebration or reflection. You just go, what is the next thing? It's not. And I don't know whether that doesn't necessarily come from a place of the inability to appreciate, but it's almost just this, you're driven to, I guess it's the drive, or it's the pursuit of the what's next, or the pursuit of the journey that is fulfilling and it's not necessarily, I don't think, I'll be happy when, right? Yeah. All right, I've achieved this. I've achieved ownership in the firm as the youngest ownership of the company. Now what's next? Because that no longer fulfills me. But I do think the value of anything, of any pursuit, is the pursuit itself. And so it's like, great, we're here, but what have we achieved? We haven't, it's fine to do all that, but where my currency or my worth is, or where I'm most driven, is the path in front of me. Do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a dangerous balancing act for all the things you just highlighted, because you can get to a point where nothing satisfies if you're not careful, because of that drive for the journey, for more, that constant yearning for what's next. And that is both the power of personality types and also the danger of that exact same personality type. So what I've found historically is I have been too driven to a point where nothing is ever enough, and you run the risk of burnout and never being able to look at the achievements you've made. And without, at least for a minute, taking stock, there is a risk that the journey you're on in life is not one that you're constantly building into, but it's one that's constantly burning you out. So that's something that I've learned over recent years, is the personality type that we are is both in our advantage and disadvantage if we're not careful.
I like the example of, and again, I can't speak for you, but certainly for me, it's the awareness of, if you're looking at a mountain climber, and I thoroughly, and I've come to be self-aware enough to understand this, that I really enjoy that journey of going up a mountain as an example, not because of the view or the pursuit of the view, but because of the pursuit of the climb. Just being on the climb itself is so much value for me. So then you get, and the best thing and the most devastating thing is, for me, that I've found in my past, is the worst thing that can happen when you get to the top of the mountain is that there's no more mountains to climb. Yeah. And it's not because I want a higher peak, or because I can't, it's not because I can't appreciate the view at the top of any one mountain, but it's because I do think I get more value at the climb than the view itself. And so the best thing for me that can happen, I think, is you don't want an infinite mountain where there's no end, because I think that's where burnout happens, and that's where you just like, what am I? You lose purpose, right? You need to have a destination of every mountain you're climbing, but the best thing that can happen is you get to the top and go, okay, where's the next one? Not because the view doesn't satisfy you, but because the lack of climb dissatisfies you.
Yeah, and I think I 100% agree. And I think the important thing about all of that and in your example is the understanding of yourself in that. So it's the burnout and the disappointment comes when you're not aware of that is who you are as a person.
Yep.
So
Agreed.
the countless stories you hear of multi-billionaires who achieve their stated business objective of selling their startup, and the day after they sell it is the most disappointing day of their life, and they're the most, that they've essentially lost their drive and passion because they achieved the thing and suddenly it didn't actually fulfill them. To your point, it was the climbing the mountain that was fulfilling them. They expected that once they'd hit that goal, they'd be internally happy, but actually it was about the mountain climb itself, not the view. So as long as you, as an individual, you can recognize that in yourself and not put all the focus and joy on reaching the top of the mountain, and know that it's about the journey. I believe that's the powerful part about it.
I accept that. You definitely need to be self-aware enough to know that. But then it becomes once you do become aware of that, I think it becomes the biggest challenge then is to know or understand that every mountain that you climb and successfully climb, you're developing, using this analogy, you're developing a better system to climb bigger mountains.
Yeah.
And so if you get into a state where you've chosen a very steep mountain, you may not be able to climb it and you fall back down, right? Or there might be so much stress weighted on your shoulders that you're just not ready for to manage all the other balls in the air in life, that you fall down the mountain and you just go like, shit, that was too difficult of a climb.
Yeah.
But then you're going to lose direction if the climb is really benign and quite easy as well. So it's a moving. You're obviously an evolving animal, whereby you're becoming a better climber as you get older. So you've then got to find the perfect next mountain to climb.
Yeah.
That is using the skills that you've learnt from the previous mountain, but not too big a mountain that you're going to fall down.
Never heard the word mountain mentioned so many times.
I actually am sponsored by mountain.com and get a kickback for every time I say mountain. So I appreciate that.
No, I think exactly as you said, it's about that moving goal or the moving target. And I think being comfortable that even when you think you've identified what that next target is or that next journey, being comfortable that may change, and not being, because it's not about the outcome. It's not about the sale of the business. It's not about the reaching a certain ladder in a corporate organization or a certain amount of money in your bank account. As long as it's not about that, if it shifts, then it doesn't matter, because it's all about the journey. And if that journey takes a right turn or a left turn or a detour, then as long as that detour is in line with what you want, then it should be okay.
I know that you're in, let's say, going back to you and the fact that you're the youngest shareholder of the business, I imagine that there's been moments even up until recently where you're being thrown a more challenging path, and therefore the amount of stress and expectation, whether self-imposed or externally imposed, must be really challenging for you. How have you learnt to deal with stress? Or how can someone be better at dealing with stress?
My experience has been that the body and those around you will send you signs that you need to be aware of. Personally, my family notices before I notice that I'm stressed. So being able to have that connectivity with, your friends and family around when you're on these journeys, it's not just about yourself. There's a whole supporting cast, and I know you're big on the team environment, and that team environment could be an athletic endeavor or it's the endeavor of life. to me, those are the most important parts. And for a long time, that was hard to hear because I didn't see it, I didn't feel it. So when someone said, what's wrong, or you're not yourself today, or you're a bit short, or whatever it might be, I was like, nothing. What are you talking about? I'm fine. I got to do this. I'm over here. I'm doing that. Leave me alone. And, I'm not too proud to admit that pushed me to a point of panic attacks and, forms of high anxiety and effectively the body shutting down because I didn't listen to the signs or to those around me that saw it. So these pursuits don't come without stress in my experience. And that's, I guess, where I was going just before around the good and the bad of the personality types. If you are inertly driven, then you're more often than not going to find yourself in a position where you're probably taken on too much. And that's good because that's what drives. You don't want to shy away from that because that's the part of you that is able to achieve, great things. But you need, in my experience, the support network around you to be aware that, okay, you're going down that road. It's time that, you took stock. And for me, what that looks like is I've got to make sure that I have some time to myself to effectively decompress from life, whether that be an athletic adventure in terms of going for a run or a bike ride or a swim or whatever it might be, or time on a golf course, or even time sitting in front of the TV, not making a noise, not talking to anyone, just existing, just to somewhat decompress of it all. And that's what works for me. My journey has told me that not everyone's the same, but I think the key to it is being able to recognize those early signs of it and have in place measures that work for you to allow you to bring yourself back from that edge.
Tell me about those panic attacks. What does it feel like?
So I've had 3 in total. First one was the most severe because I think that was just the build up, and I just didn't know what was going on. I actually blacked out in that event and was at work and came to on a gurney with the ambulance that the work had called. So, and then more recently I've had ones which are probably more common, in that it's just heart attack's the first thing that comes to your mind. Oh shit, what's going on here? So you could be, I was lying in bed, at 12 o'clock at night and woke up to this feeling where heart racing, just not being able to, I guess, take control of your body and your emotions. So it's a pretty scary sort of feeling, I guess. But what I value in the age we live in is that these things are seen as events people can talk about. Like, even as recently as our parents' generation, for a man to be able to have conversations with other men about the mental health aspects of life, just didn't exist. Like, that was not the done thing. And to me, that would be a really hard place to be struggling with things like this and not being able to talk to anyone, because that's not how the world works. So I do feel a little bit blessed that we can have these sort of conversations, and the awareness exists in the world we live in.
I appreciate you sharing that. I think it's challenging because we're driven individuals, and a lot of people are, and people want success, and the people want to achieve, and that feeling of achievement. But the almost prerequisite of all of those those destinations, or what you're wanting to get out of life, there is an element of stress in all of it.
Yeah. And
a varying level, but essentially it's a direct relationship with level of success and stress. And so it'd be interesting to see the inverted commas most successful people and see their stress tolerance, because I'd imagine it's extremely high to be able to manage what would cripple anybody.
Yeah.
You know, the Elon Musks of the world to go, yeah, that's a lot of stress, but I can handle that, or it doesn't sit with them as it does. And maybe that is something that you're not necessarily born with, but you adapt and you learn how to you manage this stress of this journey, this little goal, and then you take that skill, and then you can bear a little bit more stress, and then
Yeah.
stretch that out. But I just wondered whether, because of your rise within the company quickly or relatively quickly, in relative speed, whether that's got anything to do with.
Going back to the Elon Musk piece, I just recently read his autobiography, and it's clear that he doesn't handle the stress either. You know, there is countless chapters in that book which talk to his reactions and the way that he doesn't deal with certain things when it gets to a point. And the way it was explained to me going back a couple of years ago was essentially the Jenga tower. So each part of life is effectively a layer in the tower, and there's stresses in everyday life that everyone sort of has to work through. That could be our kids, it could be the bank manager calling, it could be whatever. Just existing creates certain flaws or stories in the tower, and the more you take on, the more driven you are, the higher that tower gets. And at some point in time, for everyone, doesn't matter who you are, the Jenga tower gets too high and it'll topple over. For me, and what I've learned around not only myself but other successful people, is their ability to manage the height of that tower. So they can almost become acutely aware of where that tipping point is, and that'll change day to day, week to week. You might have everything under control. You've got 400 stories to your Jenga tower, but that one extra block will fall it to come crashing over. So before you get to that tipping point, being able to remove a couple of stories from the tower and bring things back into control, so you can handle minor, swings in your day-to-day life without panic attacks, or in Musk's sort of example, flying off the handle and sacking people and ranting and putting Twitter tweets out that, cause the world to crash. I think everybody has a tipping point, and how high you're willing to stack that tower comes into that desire for drive and the balancing act we all play between enough stress and too much stress.
Yeah, and I think it is horses for courses. Some people just are happy with the amount of stress they've got with call it a standard job and family life, and that's stressful as well, right? But when it is a balancing act of what's the risk and reward here? How much stress am I willing to tolerate to go on this path of a that may produce some incredible outcomes?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. But I think the concern for the modern day world and me as a father is the ability of that stress and of not being able to switch off to the world's stresses these days. It's just everyone's got stress, but we're constantly connected to it now, which I think is a real detriment to the mental health of society, and what that looks like for our kids scares the hell out of me.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you, actually. And I'm coming off a weekend away with my family at some local water park resort, and I think I touched my phone 3 times in 3 days, and in those times were about 20 seconds.
Yeah.
And it was intentional, which is also scary that it's got to be intentional. That's how used to you are. It's how adapted we are with it. But I think that there's a lot of value in saying, I'm just going to be uninterrupted with the world. I'm not touching the world's stress as it comes to me, just for a little bit. And I think Andrew Huberman talks about non-sleep deep rest, and that's that's not necessarily what we're talking about, but that's also that's an intentional state of non-sleep where you are not being interrupted by the world's stress. Yeah, and I think there's a huge amount of value to that.
Yeah, can I ask how easy was it for you not to touch?
Oh, so fine. I don't give a shit.
Really?
Oh yeah, I don't care.
Yeah,
I
right.
don't care. I don't care for it at all.
Yeah.
Um, so, and I don't know, and that's where that stuff sat with me throughout all the sporting stuff. Like
Yeah.
I don't. If I'm happy just to stay in, to stay in my own lane and just enjoy the moment and the weekend,
Yeah.
and it doesn't. The people that were with me were all, other than your good self, would be, and Cody. May as well put that in so you can listen to it. But other than a select other few, I've got everyone there that I'd want there, and so why would I want to know what's going on anywhere else? Do you know? And so
Yeah.
I don't have an issue with that at all.
That's awesome because I think you're in the minority from my experience, and I'm unfortunately, I wish I was, but I'm probably in the majority in terms of it's almost just a habit. Like I don't want to be anywhere near that phone. I don't want to be on the social medias. I don't want to know what my emails are saying, but because for so long we've been so connected at all times to everything
Yeah.
at the touch of a fingertip.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's embedded. Like I even look now in my own household, and even for me to a point, watching TV isn't even stimulus enough. I've got to have a phone while I'm watching
Yeah,
TV.
which is crazy, isn't it?
So you just the stimulus that's going through your brain and the inability to connect it, to disconnect from all of that.
Yeah.
Suddenly, just becomes that much harder because we're almost addicts to it.
Yeah. And
So as
and on,
detrimental as it is to us,
yeah.
where cigarettes or any other powerful drug, it feels like it. I almost know it's bad, but the dopamine hits and all that are just so high that we can't stop to our own detriment.
Yeah, and I would put the idea out of, I love the idea of saying, well, if you've got a two-story, I mean, you've got two stories, or you got three stories. Isn't it nice? But essentially at the front door, let's say that you just put your phone there.
Yeah.
And there's almost value, I think, in getting a landline phone, diverting the calls to the landline. So if someone needs to call you, it goes to the landline.
Yeah.
But and my beautiful auntie, my mum's sister, she has a non-smartphone,
Yeah.
and she's like power against the man. Like it is an actual stance that she holds. But
Yeah.
oh man, I think whenever we joke about it or we talk about it, to her, there's such an element of jealousy to go, man, I wish I had a phone that had no apps, right? All it does is text as a character. You got to press you got to press 1 3 times to get C on it, sort of thing. And it takes phone calls, and that's it.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, that's just, and I think, like I also, it's a funny dynamic because the people will get on social media and go, oh, just letting you know I'm having a break for a week, or you don't hear from them, then a week later going, sorry guys, I'm back online. It's like, why is it, why would you need to even preface that or give, it's almost like an out of office email, but I do like the idea of is to be able to just put your phone at the front door, at the landing, on the table next to your front door.
Yeah.
And particularly if, I mean, as I said, you can, if emergency hits, that's everyone's response, right? Everyone's response is what happens if someone needs you, and it's like, well, you can get around that. We manage that as kids. They're called the landline, or unless you're the only person that can administer CPR in the world, it'll be okay.
Most things are going to be fine.
Yeah. But yeah, I just think, or I mean, maybe not. Maybe not your entire existence at home, but I do think there's value in intentional action of not touching it.
Yeah.
And that's controlling that stress, that layered stress coming in from the world. Do you know what I mean? And
because a lot, I have a view that without that, the ability of the tower to grow is diminished because you're adding in. You're not allowing that time to recover for your brain or the time to be present in the things you enjoy, and whether that be kicking the soccer ball in the backyard with your kids, or going for the run, because even going for a run these days, everyone takes their phone and it's to listen to music on or whatever, but then it beeps when you're running, or you get someone sent you this or whatever it might be. So even those times which you're dedicating to yourself to do things for yourself become interrupted, and it might not feel like it's stressful for you, but at the very least it's not allowing your body and your brain time to recover from the things that are stressing you out.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, worst things that were ever invented.
Yeah, I think they obviously they add value in terms of what they can do and the information that's at our hands. But yeah, I just think, and the kids, it's funny seeing the kids, right? Because they don't have the awareness of what it's doing, or the science behind it all. But as soon as we lost inverted commas the remotes of the TVs at home.
Yeah.
And they kicked the shits for about 2 days, and then it's almost like they just got into this rhythm of they don't even see the television anymore.
Yeah.
So you wake up in the morning and there's no TV, and so they go and I don't know, do anything but that, right? And then the creative brain comes in, and they're like, well, I'm going to build a aeroplane out of Lego, and then I'm going to build an airport out of paper, and we're going to do this, and they're all working together, and it's it's probably there's more shit fight in the mornings between them because there's only one airplane, and only one kid gets it and the other one throws a punch, and you're not going to get that when they're all separated on screens. But I think there's value to that interaction as well.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the scary bit and the unknown bit for us, right? Because we grew up in that environment you just mentioned. There was TVs, computers were back end of my schooling. So when you did watch TV, you had the choice of 3 channels, and you all watched it as a family for an hour and a half after dinner or before bed or whatever it might have been. So even in my mind, that environment is a better environment than what we've currently created, because at the moment everyone's got their own screen, and so even the ability to communicate and enjoy something together is diminished, because everyone's watching whatever it is they want to watch when they want to watch it, rather than at least enjoying that bit of stimulus as a family group, and being able to be present in a moment together, at least, even if it is through TV.
Yeah, fair. Now, we follow a lady by the name of Cody Sanchez on the devices that we're so quickly. So we're going away.
Where those 4 30-second moments.
Absolutely, right? Yeah. Just trying to work out what she's. Anyway, she's an entrepreneur, business lady, and I thought, and this is obviously we've just explained the negatives behind it, but it's wonderful. This is the positives, and getting hot tips from her. She's over in the States, obviously, but and I thought I think this is for her. This is shout out, to Cody. 7 harsh truths to think bigger in relation to work and success. And I thought I'd run them by you, Nick, and see what your comments were about them. First one, you need to reframe your thinking to how, not won't. Instead of saying that won't work, ask how could this work for me? Don't be taken down by problems before they even exist. So you as an engineer would just love this, right? To be able to go, okay, this is a problem.
Correct.
And because it's a problem, there is a solution to figure that out.
Absolutely. Problem solving is my thing, but in saying that, I think the reason why Cody makes that point, and probably was so prevalent in society, is that's essentially human nature, right? And comes from ancestral sort of place of making sure you survive. So the first thing to look at in an environment or in a situation is where could I have been killed in those days. Obviously we've come a long way since then, but I think we've kept a lot of that inert sort of, I guess, focus from those days, and what that breeds is missed opportunity in my mind. That it's always the the what ifs in the negative fashion rather than the what ifs in the positive fashion. So it's what could go wrong rather than what could go right. So if everything is viewed in that light, and you find a reason not to do anything, you find a reason not to walk out the front door of the morning.
Yeah, and I think also like achieving success in however wish you want to achieve it requires that pushback against the problems, right? If it was all green lights, if it was easy, then it wouldn't be worth achieving, or it's not. There wouldn't be that satisfaction. So it's almost like you need those problems to exist to be able to test you to go forward with them.
Yeah, that's right.
Number 2, not everyone will understand or support your drive. Those who say it cannot be done should not interrupt the ones doing it. Rule of thumb, if someone hasn't achieved what you want to, don't listen to their advice.
Pretty powerful, right? And to me, and I'm not sure what the rest of Cody's 7 tips are, but the thing that jumps out at me is right from the youngest point, those people that you hang out with have the biggest ability to influence who you are and who you can become. And I think that people misrepresent how important that is later in life. You know, we're very conscious of it for our kids and choosing the right school and making sure they're around the right people to make sure they learn and grow and become good people. But in adulthood, we get trapped. Well, this is my group, and this is, whether that be from high school or university or whatever it might be, and that's my circle. But that circle may actually be holding you back from what you're actually capable of and what you actually achieve.
Yeah, accept that. Also find that more often than not, people who have succeeded in the path that you're trying to go down will be more encouraging for you to try and get to that point as well. And it's usually the people who don't want to walk that path, or haven't walked that path, or have their own reservations or hang-ups about the fact that they're not doing it. The people below you will be quite quickly able to criticize or pull you down or try to keep you small. Yeah, whereas the people that have been wildly successful will be more than open to encouragement. And that's what I've found in my life.
I agree. I think it's sort of inertly linked to point 1 around risk. That those who've done don't see what they've done as risky. It's achieved, therefore it is no risk. Those that haven't done, all they see is the risk. And therefore they will continue to highlight the risk to you, and then you've got to deal with that rather than someone picking you up and helping you forward.
Number 3, you're letting fear cloud your judgment. And this maybe comes to that risk bit.
Yeah.
99% of people who hate their job keep it out of fear. Fear of the uncertainty, fear of discomfort, fear of failure. But fear makes fools of us all. Everything you want is on the other side of it.
Truth bombs from Cody.
Yeah, I think there was a big realization for me in this whole idea of risk, or at least fear, let's say, of things not going to plan on a business level, to go, shit, everyone who has achieved big has to have just accepted that level of fear, accepted that level of risk. It's not as if the multi-millionaire local developer is just sitting back without any risk. A good mate of mine who runs one of the biggest building companies, he's on the hook on every corner, right? And everything they do, his house is up for grabs at the bank if it goes pear-shaped. There's a huge amount of risk everywhere. Yeah. And I think only recently I've had to go, oh yeah, that's just part of the course. That's just what you have to accept.
Yeah. Yeah, and goes back to your earlier question around, and I think you could interchange risk and fear here, but and stress, do your tolerances to that change over time? Do you become more aware of what you actually should be fearful of or not fearful of? Like what's really a risk, or what's really stress, does that change over time, and does that allow you to take the next step and the next step after that? Because those things that were scary, well, suddenly you've realized that they're not so scary because I can manage my way out of that, or I know the solution if that is to happen, or, you know, any number of outcomes that you had rolling around in your head. Suddenly, well, no, even the worst case isn't that bad, so let's crack on. So does that change over time? I would think so. Obviously, some people are inertly bigger risk takers and have less fear than others. But I think also the perception of where that fear sits changes with time.
Yeah.
And probably in stage of life as well, right?
Yeah, that makes that definitely plays a part. I think also that the majority of people, and we're privileged to be, you know, us being in Australia and having the background and the, you know, the schooling and education that we've all had, or that you and I have had at least. But I think for a lot of people, there isn't. I think if you're in an extremely challenging environment in your life, that will facilitate the need to change, or then maybe the need to manage your fear or take risk, as we said. But for the majority of people, there's this sort of, they're in this grey zone of it's not as bad as it could be, and it's just fine, right? It's satisfactory.
Yeah.
And so it's not bad enough to need the change to engage in that risk management.
Yeah.
Whereas
but not good enough to be happy.
Yeah, exactly. Or to contemplate what happiness could look like, right?
Yeah.
So people almost need, you know, some catastrophic event or otherwise to go, shit, now I need to start looking at this differently.
Yeah.
But in saying that, I'm sure there's a lot of people who are not taking risks and 1,000% happy with their lot, which is beautiful, right?
Correct.
Because that's what the game is, to be content, I guess. Cody, number 4, you need skin in the game. If you can't feel the impacts of your effort, if you are a cog in an endless machine, if you get judged on hours, not results, you stop caring. You're numb. Instead, buy a business, earn equity, feel consequences of your choices. It's oddly addicting.
See, I don't think that's for everyone.
Okay.
I'm going to disagree with your codes. I'm sure she'll be very upset
She'll be texting you with significant dissatisfaction.
So I think that's 100% true for me, and without putting words in your mouth, probably yourself as well. But for others, the risk and the stress and the fear that we've just spoken about, that comes with having skin in the game, whether that be financial skin or some other form, could well be debilitating to the point where they simply can't function. And that's just not who people are. And that's great. There's all different types of people in the world for a reason. No one type's better than the others. It takes all types. But I just don't necessarily think that approach would work for everyone.
Fair. Number 5, education is free. The curriculum to learn a $20,000 a month skill is available online for everyone. It's not a lack of dollars that holds people back. It's society's brainwashing that only degrees and big companies on your CV equals credibility.
Back on track now, Codes.
You haven't unfollowed just yet.
That's right. As an example, the skill set that I use most in my day-to-day is in no way attached to the engineering degree that I got at university.
Interesting.
And it was more. It's a life skill. It's necessary, not anything that I learned in any book, to be honest. And you know, I guess I'm talking about here the ability to build relationships and understand people. So to me, I think in degrees or bits of paper serve a purpose at this point in the way the world works, but I completely agree that they're by no means necessary and indicate success or otherwise in a chosen field or profession.
Acknowledging though, you needed an engineering degree to get in the door with where you're at now.
So to a point, they still serve a purpose
Yep.
because you've got to have that bit of paper. Is that so? I've actually been conscious in my organisation to try and shift that, looking at the actual skill set required for a role rather than the expectations on academic achievement to fulfill a role.
Yeah. Number 6, you honestly, this is my favorite. You honestly have no clue of what you're capable of. Do you think all successful entrepreneurs are geniuses? Some, sure, but 99% of them, the one thing that separates them from you is just self-belief. Try to prove me wrong. Find your limits.
It's powerful.
It's good. It's my favorite.
Yeah.
I do believe most people just don't. I don't know. Either just don't believe that they're capable of much more than they know,
Yeah.
or whether they don't want to open that sort of Pandora's box.
Yeah. Do you think that comes back to the fear piece?
I don't know, and that's
Fear
what's
comfort.
that's maybe, and that's what's driven me a lot in my last, I don't know, I guess my whole adulthood is to help people see that, right? My premise is that you can achieve anything you want, and you need to want it. So you can't just say, "Oh, I want to go to the moon." It's like, no, you don't really, right? You don't want to.
Yeah.
You don't really want to move to the States and apply to NASA and go through those rigors. You just, But if you truly want something, then I believe you'd achieve it.
Yeah.
And like I said, like we talked about last week, with what I'm trying to achieve for next year, a massive hurdle came up, and for about a minute, the floor fell underneath me. I was like, shit, that means this dream is over. And literally, it was about a minute of going, of not pity, but just acceptance of, well, that's game over, right? And I'm going to have to let about 10 people know who are part of this journey that this is done. And then after about a minute, my brain quickly shifted to, how do I solve this problem?
Yeah.
What are other solutions? And when you think about it, there was literally about 8 different options going forward to solve it. And I chose the first one, and the first one it has solved the issue. But it is that position of, and it was almost comical, and I had this feeling of this sort of defense feeling, or this protective nature or protective instinct of like, oh, no, you're not, that's not stopping this dream.
Yeah.
Because I believe that I can achieve it. And so I wished that more people would understand that you can achieve anything you want.
So is it, in terms of that, is the opportunity for everyone to be able to break that down into smaller pieces and not get hung up on, well, I want to go to the moon, but I can't fly, so therefore I can't go to the moon. And reflecting on Cody's messaging in her entrepreneurial background, something that really appealed to me is she talks about boring businesses and essentially the idea that you don't have to throw your whole world against the wall to try and do something new. You can take small steps and learn as you go in smaller businesses. You don't necessarily have to quit your job, mortgage your house, and live in your parents' basement to try and execute a startup business. There are steps along the way that allow you to potentially, meet that goal. I just wonder whether part of the gap in allowing people to realize their opportunity is the big step they think they have to make.
Yep, I accept that. I think also, and I got this from Jordan Peterson, where it was, you need to sit down at the end of your bed and think, go through your life that currently exists, and sit with yourself and to say, what would you want to change if you could change, that you should change?
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, you do that for a little bit of time, and it's extremely powerful because you'll realize that you are soon quickly wanting to look at your phone, or you're soon because it's so daunting of a prospect of taking full stock and full responsibility and ownership of where you are right now, and then to say, well, what is it that I want in certain elements of the different elements of my life? Are they 10 out of 10? And if not, what do I need to do to get them to 10 out of 10 or close enough? And so I think partly people don't want to open that Pandora's box because they don't want to accept deficiencies within areas of their life, maybe.
Yeah.
And once they do and say, okay, understand that anything is possible and that they've got power to achieve that, then you can go from there and say, what is it, what do you want to achieve?
Yeah.
And that may not be running small businesses as a side hustle to your main job, but at least you'll get clarity as to what you're wanting to, a direction and clarity as to where you want to go with certain elements of your life, rather than just be blind to it and just go through the motions, and all of a sudden your children are at year 12 and you're at the graduation, you're going, where the hell did those 17 years go? You're so intentional with, this is exactly what I want to do. I'm not there, but I have a plan as to where I'm going to go. And that I think there's 7 categories that he talks about in terms of friendships, spousal relation, children relation, your career, your finances, your spiritual stuff, your spiritual position, your emotional awareness, and like that, and your physical, I guess. And you take stock on all of those and you go, right, what needs to be, what needs improving? And then, but understanding that you can achieve anything you want in any of those. Yeah.
Yeah. It's no wonder it's so hard for people, me included, to wrap your head around the statement of you can achieve anything you want, because I think we're almost brought up to think otherwise. I think very early in the developmental phase of our children, they get too many boundaries put around them, and that imagination that starts to fade, and you end up, no, little Johnny, you can't be a fire truck. Yes.
Well, there is some separation where you are 3 or 4, and you're like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you're, I want to be a policeman. And you're like, yeah, great. Or you want to be an actor. I want to go, work in Hollywood. And you're like, yeah, good on you, little Johnny. And then at some point between then and, I don't know, 13, the world just crashes on you and go, no. You can kill your dreams.
That's right. And you're not this, or you're not that, and therefore that's not open to you, or that's not enough of this or not enough of that, and therefore you need to choose from this.
I don't want to put Cody out, but I don't believe this is well written. I'll paraphrase. You won't regret taking a chance on yourself even if you fail. You will regret never knowing. Regrets of inaction sting the worst. And I think that's playing on you more than playing on me right now.
Yeah.
But it's a fair point, right?
Absolutely. And it is probably a good summary point to all of the previous 6 pieces, right? It's effectively the outcome of not being in control of all those other bits.
Yeah.
And being left with the what ifs, because you let fear get in the road, you let other people get in your way. You weren't confident enough in your own abilities to achieve greatness. That's probably the outcome of all of the previous 6 points, is that you're left feeling, what if?
Yeah. And that, I think for me, this, for a long time I've understood and appreciated that you get one chance of this life in this form, I guess. And the worst thing for me is to think, what if? And regret the inaction. I think you'd never regret the action, and to go, okay, I'd rather see how this plays out, or this risk-taking adventure purpose for a greater level of success or otherwise, than sit on my hands and stay in the safe place, because it's that discomfort it's that risk that provides the value. And shit, obviously, you and I have done a lot of things in our lives combined, and I think we live by that. But it's also a conscious decision of continually asking yourself, right?
Yeah.
To go,
that's right.
all right, I've done this, I've gotten this far now in this path. Am I now playing it safe?
Yeah.
Even though maybe 3 or 4 years ago this was high risk, this path, it's now become a pretty risk-free endeavor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Should I be going off to a more riskier path?
Absolutely. And that, as you said, the constant assessment of that is the important bit, right?
So how do you manage that when you come to a crossroad of decision where you could play it safe, or you could go, but you don't want to regret the what ifs, and the path over here is riddled with risk, but also a good proportion of it as reward. How do you manage that, knowing also you've got to provide for your family and all of those other balls in the air?
Yeah, and I guess to your last point there, like I think there's stages in life for me where I'm more open to take risks, and those risks might differ in terms of what they actually are, whether they're career-wise or they're a personal step or they're a whatever it might be, bungee jumping or something like that. But I'm very conscious at the moment of trying to get the right balance across life, and almost using that as a lens to whether I do or don't jump at certain risks. So to me, and based on what I mentioned earlier about some of the stresses and things like that, it's how do you balance the personality side of drive and personal development with making sure you're around to see your kids grow up and spend time with your wife, and to be able to smell the roses and enjoy the sunshine and enjoy some of the now when you look at any single decision. And I think that lens, or that melting pot that you look through to make decisions, changes over time. The decision I make around whether or not to take a certain risk might be different today than it is in 6 months' time, or 6 years' time, or 20 years ago. So I think there's a constant need to assess the balance, and be able to put a lens on how you go through that decision making process, I guess.
Beautiful. Well, I appreciate your comments and your ability to share your experiences, Mr. Quinn.
Not a problem. I've you probably know, but I think it's 6 months ish since I was last on the pod.
Yeah, you're the first guest.
Yeah, and I've only just recovered from the dehydration I suffered due to the hot box.
No, it was more than 6 months. It was almost 12 months because
12 months.
It was summer.
Yeah, so it was a significant dehydration event. But
and that's the reason why we're doing it, via Zoom or however the Cody sorted this, because you don't trust me. But there is an air conditioning pumping at the moment in this room.
I have to be able to temperature control my own environment.
Yeah, that was a condition of coming back.
That's right. Thank you, mate. Much appreciated.
Have a great Christmas.
Enjoyable.
Have a great Christmas, and bring on next year as to how we manage the risk in our lives.
Beautiful. Thank you, mate.
Thank you so much to Nick for spending the time with us again on the show, and obviously talking about risk and fear and that relationship with success. So I really enjoyed it. I hope you did too. If you did think it was good, let us know, and please feel free to share it with anyone who you think will enjoy it as well. But until next time, peace.